Hi parents, I'm going to clear up some myths for you today about your 4 to 5 month old baby taking really short naps or having other challenges with naps at this stage. One of the main reasons that there's so much challenge at this point is because of some myths that are out there that could be tripping you up. So I'm going to share those with you because I hear them all the time. I'm going to clear this up for you so that you can optimize your baby's naps during this time, 5 to 6 months. Probably the issue started around 4 months, and there are reasons for that I'll get to. Hi, I'm Angela, the science mommy, and I'm the founder of the Smart Baby Sleep System. And yes, I am a sleep coach, but what's different about me is I base everything on my studies in developmental neuroscience. So it's all based on brain science, how the brain develops. And therefore, you will never hear any of my advice or recommendations involve any type of leaving your baby to cry or leaving them alone when they're crying and signaling for you to come. So it's very responsive and attachment science based. But let's dive into those myths that could be tripping you up with your 5-month-old's short nap. So I'm going to give you 4 main points to look at when you're trying to meet the challenges of these short naps and optimize your 5-month-old's naps and therefore night sleep, because of course the naps affect the night sleep. And I'll give you solutions based on brain science. So it's all developmentally appropriate and neurologically and developmentally makes sense. So a lot of the things that you hear out there, conventional advice really doesn't make sense neurologically anymore with everything we know about the developing brain. So the first thing I want to share with you is your baby's nap really too short? Is it actually a short nap for their age developmentally? Well, if it's under 45 minutes, it is probably an interrupted sleep cycle. A sleep cycle is 45 minutes. So if your baby is waking around 40 minutes, some babies, if they really got to sleep right at that time that you think and they kind of waking up at 40 minutes, they can sometimes get away with that, but you will need to shorten the period of wakefulness after a nap like that, because that's a 1 sleep cycle nap. 45 to 50 minutes is a sleep cycle. If it's under 40 minutes though, you can be pretty sure that your baby had an interrupted sleep cycle, and so that would actually qualify as a short nap. So first, make sure that your expectations are in line, because a lot of the advice you hear about baby taking an hour and a half or 2-hour naps, those are older babies. Babies 4 to 5 months very, very typically just take 1 sleep cycle nap, and then once in the 24-hour period, they will take a longer nap, but it's usually only once, a longer sleep. It could be at night. Hopefully the longest stretches are at night, and there are ways that we can work on that we definitely work toward that. But if it's during the day, and if it's a 45-minute nap, that's very typical for up to 5 months. Around 5 months, they begin to naturally lengthen their naps. So where they'll go from 1 sleep cycle and it won't be interrupted because you'll be doing all the things right that I'm going to teach you. But then they'll go into that second 45-minute cycle, and that begins to happen between 5 and 6 months. It just naturally happens if you have the sleep environment right and the overtired and all the things that we're going to talk about. So it may be that you need to just adjust your expectations and understand that a 40 to 45-minute nap is okay, and don't beat your head against a wall trying to make something happen that isn't really biologically, developmentally realistic. So if it happens, just let them get up and go on about your day, but just adjust the wake time so that you avoid overtired. And there's the next video also deals with overtired and wake time, so you can get a little more information on that if you are interested. It's super key, and it's a key part of my Smart Baby Sleep System to optimize that and avoid overtired at all costs, at all times. It makes everything so much easier. But if your baby is waking under that 40-minute mark, that means that there is something that we need to figure out and get to the source of, and it's usually overtired or the sleep environment. So if you're one of those parents that's slaving away over the crib at the 40-minute or 45-minute wake up or 50-minute wake up, trying to extend that nap and get them to go back to sleep and take a full nap. If you have a 5-month-old, that's really an exercise in futility. And it's so much frustration that you really don't need, and so much stress that you don't need. So just don't do that. Just shorten. If you're taking a nap with your 5-month-old and they stir at 45 minutes and you want to shush and pat them back, that's absolutely beautiful. That's fine. That's going to help them as they're naturally beginning to extend the naps. It's gonna help facilitate that natural process. So you certainly can do that. But I just have a lot of parents coming to me where they are super frustrated and drained because they're trying so desperately to extend a 5-month-old's 45-minute nap. Just don't do it. Just go on about your life, and just shorten that wake time. That's super important. So before I get into more of the solutions for if you indeed do have a short nap under 45 minutes, under one sleep cycle, let me share the second myth that is really tripping parents up, that your 5-month-old needs to learn to put themselves to sleep or learn how to go to sleep on their own. This is really developmentally and neurologically a misnomer, because it is not it's not an issue of learning to go to sleep. Your baby, especially at 4, 5, and 6 months, has a very strong survival instinct to check in with a parent and to get some attention, physical contact. A lot of times, between 4 and 5 months, they're actually hungry after the 45-minute mark, because they may, and that's another key, is feeding them. How you feed them preceding the nap is one of the solutions to short naps as well. But no, you can't really teach a baby out of their survival instinct that is causing them to want to have that check-in time after a 45-minute sleep cycle. That's something that most of the time, life is not perfect, but most of the time needs to be indulged. Okay, so that they need that. They just need that for their security, and the security is building during this time. It's a super critical developmental time for building security. So we really don't want to mess with that. But what you hear is that your baby is waking up too soon from the nap and having the short nap because they don't know how to put themselves back to sleep. Well, first of all, that's only refers to when they come up from that 45-minute sleep cycle. Yes, at that point they become aware of their surroundings and that they're alone, if they are indeed alone. Then that's when they usually need that check-in. And there are things we can do to minimize their feeling of the need of the check-in, but it's not really that they need to learn. The way that I approach it in my system is that they learn eventually through responsiveness and other techniques using responsiveness, that they are okay on their own. And so they learn that they're okay and that the distress is going to be met with comfort. And then what they're actually learning is not to put themselves to sleep. We don't need to learn to sleep. We know our bodies know how to sleep when we feel safe. So what they learn is that they're safe. And that takes some time, and that takes a lot of responsive, high nurturing care. But if your baby is having a legit short nap, that means that something is interrupting their sleep cycle. So we'll get to that, but it's what you can do. That's a different thing. But what you can do with the waking after the 45-minute mark is there's two things you can do that shows them that they're safe, so they don't get triggered in that at the end of that cycle and need you. And this can happen gradually between 5 and 6 months. It's the perfect time to start working on it. And it's two simple things that are not stressful for the parent or the baby. Okay, nothing I recommend is stressful for the parent or the baby. That's my rule. So what you can do is called a delay, is just what it sounds like. You just when you hear your baby wake up from the nap, you just give them a few minutes. You don't rush in at the first sound. and like give them a few minutes, and then whenever they do start to signal for you or signal a little distress, not crying, but just you know they want you to come, then you go ahead and you go in and you respond with lots of love and comfort and fun, hopefully, right? So you always respond, but during that time, this is the magic, during that little period of time between when they woke up and they figured out they wanted you to come and then they signaled for you to come, that period of time, they were experiencing everything being okay. And then you came and you responded and they got what they needed and they didn't feel scared. They weren't left in distress, so they got what they needed. And that's what teaches them, like, okay, I was there alone and I experienced that, but then I got what I needed. So the repeated experience of delaying coming in to get them from the crib, from the nap, or the family bed, if that's where they're napping, just that delay is giving them the experience that's going to teach them that they are safe. And then eventually they'll just go ahead and go on to the next sleep cycle, because it's not foreign for them to be laying there in the crib by themselves. And if they're sleepy and they feel safe, they will begin to go right back into the next sleep cycle. The other thing that you can do to address this issue of sleep associations is what you'll hear it called a lot in the sleep coaching community. And that is a real thing, but it's not necessary to just put them in the crib awake and like sink or swim kind of mentality and make them learn by crying themselves to sleep that they can go to sleep in the crib. A better way to accomplish the exact same thing is what I call an aware transfer. Okay, an aware transfer. So if you're rocking or nursing your baby to sleep, which is okay if you do all the other things right, you can do that, and it's beautiful and easy. What's more easy than just nursing your baby and rocking your baby to sleep? It's beautiful. I mean, it's not to be missed. It's an experience for you and your baby during this time that is just precious. So we don't want to take that away. You can do that, and there's more information on my website. You don't have to put them down awake. That is just absolute torture to try to make that happen, because you've got that survival instinct working against you. They do not want to go to sleep when they don't know that they're safe. And they don't know that at first. Their survival instinct says, I need parent physical contact to be safe. So a better way to do this is an aware transfer. Aware transfer means that you're rocking them. You go to transfer them to the crib or to their sleep surface, whatever that may be. And instead of putting them down in the crib awake, eventually you'll be able to, but we're talking 4 to 6 months here. You put them down, but during the transfer, they have a moment of where they barely wake up enough to recognize that they're going into the crib. So it's not like they fall asleep completely on the breast or in arms, or even if they do, they just wake up just enough. A lot of times you'll see them, well, this happens naturally. They'll look up and then they'll close their eyes. So they're in a light sleep state, but they recognize that they're being transferred. And there's a sweet spot there. If they're sound asleep and you're putting them down, they're not aware, then yes, when they wake up in the crib, it can be foreign and startling to them, and they may feel like they need to call for you, a signal, cry, whatever. So we call it signaling. In the sciences, they call it signaling. But if they are aware that they went into the crib, they are less likely to feel that they need to signal, because it's familiar and they know that they understand this is where I went to sleep, and they can go back into that next sleep cycle. So you can accomplish that same thing by them only being aware. All you have to do is get that moment. If a lot of times it happens naturally when you're transferring, because they kind of wake up a little bit. But just that moment that they're aware that they're going in the crib, and then they go right back into the deeper sleep. They begin the sleep cycle. And that's going to involve, to hit that sweet spot, it's sometimes going to involve more soothing while they're in the crib. So with your hands in your, or whatever the sounds and touch that your unique baby likes, to get them to go ahead and go back down. It's a very, very light waking state that you're going for there, for that sweet spot, and then getting them to go ahead and go back into the deeper sleep while they're in the crib, or whatever sleep surface you want them to sleep on. So how cool is that, that it accomplishes exactly the same thing as this sort of torture of trying to make your baby go down drowsy but awake. I mean, that just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen naturally. So, and that's because of developmental realities for little babies. And maybe, you can definitely work up to that later on. But where you start at this age is with the aware transfer. So if this approach is resonating with you, please hit the thumbs up button. Let me know that you like this video. Post a comment or question below, and please subscribe to my channel. It is new, but I'm going to be posting lots of advice like this to clear up a lot of the myths that you're hearing and to give you advice that makes sense developmentally for your baby.
What happens is your baby's lower brain will check in, and with any stimulation from the environment, internal or external, and see if there's anything he needs to pay attention to. And since babies don't have a lot of knowledge of the world that we're in, the thing that they feel they might need to pay attention to is basically anything out of the ordinary, or it could be many things that we as parents know is fine, but they don't know that. So they may feel they need to wake all the way up out of the sleep cycle and check in with the parent to make sure they're okay. So this is when you get woken up every 40 minutes or so, and that's really not conducive to your well-being. So this is what we're working with here to try to optimize the sleep environment so that this little check-in goes smoothly and baby continues on into the next sleep cycle, which gives you another 45 minutes or so, and hopefully another, until you can put together 3 or 4 sleep cycles without your baby calling out for you, crying for you, needing to check in with you.
The third thing I want to share with you is when you hear, put that baby on a schedule, right? We've all heard that through the decades, and there is something definitely to be said for working with the developing circadian rhythm. That internal clock is forming, and there's a lot that you can do to optimize that. However, most of where your focus needs to be at this age is not on a schedule. Yay, you don't have to do it. What you need to do is just stay within the period of wakefulness between sleep times that your baby can handle neurologically and developmentally. That means they can't handle being awake for more than a very specific period of time in between sleep times. And this is because their brains are growing so incredibly quickly, and they're taking in so much information. And they really have to shut that down, all of the information that's coming at them. They have to shut that down and process and rest their brains because of the brain growth. And you can see a lot more information in my lessons 1 and 2 for free on the brain growth and how much is growing and the incredible amount of synaptic connections that are happening during this time. It's absolutely staggering. So if you think of our minds as flashlight versus lantern, Alison Gopnik actually talked about this, and so a baby, so we have kind of like a flashlight focus, and we have the reticular activating system filter. We have filters as adults and older children. We filter information coming at us. And so our minds are more like flashlights, whereas babies, it's like lantern. They're getting everything. They don't have a filter, so all of the sensory information, all of the emotional input, all of this, everything is coming in. So they have to sleep when they have to sleep, okay? Or they're going to get some stress hormones going, and the stress hormones will interrupt the sleep, will sabotage your naps, and will interfere with your night sleep. So just being aware of the wake times and getting your baby back to sleep during that window of time. Again, it's a sweet spot. So this is actually so much easier than trying to stick to a schedule. Now, I do recommend that you wake your baby up, and I have a way that you do this right in my course, but you do set a morning wake up for the morning time, and then when you go for the wake times at that time, then you do have somewhat of a predictable schedule. At least you can schedule, a hair appointment or a mommy and me with a reasonable certainty that you'll be able to do it. But as far as having a specific time, like, okay, it's 2:00, it's time for that second nap, that doesn't work, because depending on the duration of the previous nap, depending on the activity level in between, and yes, 5-month-olds have activity levels, if they're doing tummy time, if they're outside, how much stimulation they're having. There's too many variables for you to be able to predict a nap time. The one variable you need to pay attention to is how long have they been awake? And then there's the slight tweaking factors, like what was the length of the last nap, or if it was night sleep, so if it's the first nap of the day, how was the night? Was there a lot of waking during the night? Were there long periods of wakefulness during the night? Was the morning wake up a little earlier than normal? Those are things that will make you kind of lean on the shorter side of the wake time formula. But mainly you just go by that formula. And so for a 5-month-old, it's about 1:45 to 2 hours. The first wake time is usually shorter. So really a 5-month-old can't handle staying awake for more than about 1:45. If it's a short nap, that may need to be even less. If it's a longer nap, then they can go 2 hours. The last wake time of the day could possibly go about 2.5 hours if they had good naps all day. So the period before bedtime could be a little bit longer, up to 2.5 hours. But really, you just go by those times, and you avoid overtired, and then you don't have to worry about putting your baby on a schedule, because look at that scheduled nap time. I don't know if you can see my hands. They may be undertired or overtired, and either way, you're setting yourself up for a lot of frustration. If they're not quite tired yet, frustration, because you're just going to be trying to get them to go to sleep. I mean, imagine if you're not tired trying to make yourself go to sleep, right? So, or if they are overtired, then those stress hormones are kicking in, and they're fighting sleep, and they're agitated, and they're just a mess. But they are still fighting sleep and having trouble going to sleep because of the stress hormones. So you really want to avoid that at all costs, because overtired can definitely cause short naps. So it can interrupt the sleep cycle with those stress hormones that I talked about, and cause your baby to wake up before the sleep cycle is over. And then the overtired perpetuates because they didn't get a good nap. And there are more signs of how to tell if your baby got overtired in my next video. Now, the fourth really important thing that I want you to know about short naps and interrupted naps, and interrupted sleep cycles, is the sleep environment. It sounds obvious, but you will hear so many conflicting, confusing tips about your baby's sleep environment one of the worst is they need to get used to noise or light or all of the things that interrupt their sleep cycle. Like, 4 and 5 months old still love to be swaddled. They still need that cocooned feeling, however you can get that. There's more, obviously that's a whole topic in my course, but whether it's a sleep sack, whether it's a little wedge, or there's safety guidelines with a lot of these things, but you'll hear people say, oh, we can't do any of that. We can't do anything to make them, comfortable and conducive to sleep because we want them to get used to not having that or get used to the noise, or they'll end up not being able to sleep without perfect environment. Well, concern is they need to sleep. And really at this stage, they've just gotten through that 4th trimester period, where during that time, you really have to mimic the womb for them. They're just coming out of that 4th trimester is Dr. Harvey Karp's term and concept. And that is absolutely true and so important to understand and to work with that. But we're talking about 4 to 6 month olds. They're just graduating from that womb stage. Now they're transitioning. And so we need to do everything we can with the sleep environment to make it conducive to sleep for them. I hope this helps. There's definitely a lot to baby sleep that you can optimize, that you can improve without resorting to cry it out sleep training methods.